Let's start off with this diagram. Does anybody want to name that diagram? Anybody know what that is? It's a peak, yeah. It's like a pyramid, and it's named after somebody. Has anybody heard of this? It's called Freytag's pyramid. So this is like a famous like diagram for storytelling, and it's pretty simple. It's like, here's your beginning, your setting, rising action, climax, and resolution, falling action, and then this fancy thing called the denouement. Yep. So denouement is, it's kind of like if the story has worked and you're identifying with the characters, you just kind of want to hang out with them for a while. You know, you want to like be in that like good space again. You know, you're back on Earth again, and it's just like, yeah, cool. Let's hang out and like see how awesome things are. So, I don't know. I always think of like The Secret Life of Walter Mitty is one of my favorite denouements. You know, it's like he's back from his big epic adventure, and he's walking with the girl, and they see like, I don't know if have you guys seen this movie? And then they see like the cover. You know, it's just like a beautiful denouement. You know, it's like everything's good, and we're just like basking in the joy of being with this guy who's transformed and all that, right? So, okay, so that's that one. And then I've also drawn this one, and this is going to, I'm going to use this as a really basic storyline. So a lot of people start with thinking a story as a topic, but it's not. You know, a topic is just, I'm doing a story about X. Plot is something really essential to a story. So this happened, then this happened, and so on, a sequence of events. And then it also helps to have a theme. So a story is really all three of those things put together. And a lot of times people just pick one of those, and that might work unless it's a topic. Topics don't generally work as stories. Sometimes a theme can carry the whole thing, especially in a short. And sometimes a plot can carry something in a short, because, you know, action is fun to watch. If it's just entertaining, it gets you somewhere. But typically having a good topic, a plot, and a theme, like a point, helps a lot. So what I'm going to do here is like illustrate the basic elements of a story. So we're going to have like, we're going to do something super simple, and you guys can help me brainstorm as we go here. But so what I've done here is I've just created this little hill here, and I'm going to put like two characters down here. I'll start with one character, a circle. So the circle is our character. And the circle needs to have a problem, right? And the problem maybe is that he wants to be up here, right? So now we have a gap. So this is the first element of a good story, is like, this is what could be. Like, he wants to be up there. But why does he want to be up there? We need to like raise the stakes, right? He wants to be up there because he can hear all these other circles bouncing and having a great old time up there, and he can hear it. He just really wants to get up there. So now we have like stakes, right? Okay, so now we need more elements, right? So we got a gap between what is and could be. We've got high stakes. The next thing is heroes, allies, and villains. So we've got our hero, he's our protagonist. Let's add another character here. It'll be a square. Okay, so now we have like characters, and now we've got a good obstacle here. The hill is the obstacle. Okay, and now the circle, now we need to have some action, right? So the circle wants to get up here, and so he takes off to go up the mountain. But he's a circle, so he keeps rolling back down. All right. And he's really sad. You gotta have emotion in your stories. and you know, he just keeps doing this. Oh, it's really sad. And he comes up here and he rolls back and he hits the square, and the square is getting mad. And the square can like hear all the friends up there too, and he kind of wants to be up there, but he knows like he wouldn't really fit in. So there's like some character development, drama stuff going on. But he sees the circle and how much he wants to go, and eventually he feels kind of bad for the circle, so he tips over and he starts slowly going up the hill. And as he does, the circle keeps trying to go, and he bounces back against the square. And the square just keeps going, and he goes slow, but he got traction, right? And the square takes him all the way up to the top. So he makes it, he's happy, he sees his friends, and the square is over here. And he goes and he plays with his friends. Now we've hit like a climax, right? He's achieved the boon, but now, you know, the square is sad, like all the circles playing. And, you know, this circle is now like in the game, and he's having fun and he's smiling, but then he looks over and he sees, so have his eyes look over here, and he gets sad. And so he goes over and he gets the square, and he brings him into the fun, and the square ends up here. And now we have like our climax, right? So here we've like actually told a story with a gap, obstacles, characters. We had rising action, we have resolution, like all these basic elements, and that's a story. So now, how could we do this in like the real world, and like what elements would make it work? So one of the things we're going to try to do today is we have 48 hours in the film festival to come up with a story and produce it and everything. Let's see what we can do like in 48 minutes to create a story. All right. So the first thing is we have to find an idea. We got like the basic story, like we know the structure, but we need an idea. And so I wrote a bunch of ideas for finding ideas, like some basic tips, like write about what you know, take a character and put them in an unlikely situation and see what happens. Between now and then, you should keep a story notebook of ideas, themes, and scenes. You can always play the game opposite. So if there's a movie or TV or something, some film you've seen, some short film you've seen that's really cool, just try to flip it upside down and see like what happens. And that often doesn't result in copying because all kinds of bizarre things happen when you flip something upside down. And then I'd also recommend doing lots and lots of research. Like the more you know, and not only about stuff, but also the more you know about yourself and the world, all of that becomes fodder for creating stories. And great storytellers have lots of interesting experiences and lots of knowledge. So is anybody passionate about an idea? Has anybody had a revelation lately? Like, you know what I mean? Like great stories sometimes have a revelation. Sometimes they have, or sometimes maybe you know a great character that we can model off of. Maybe you know some crazy situation somebody got in, and we could just start with that, Like one easy thing to do is take a character who you never expect to be in X situation, and then just put them in that situation, and then tell a story about how they got to that situation and what they're going to do to get out of that situation, So lots of like different things you could set up here. Yeah, go for it.
You could have a person, whether they're in college, high school, obviously this is like for any person at any age, that views their life based off of materialistic things.
Yes, I like it. Keep going.
So like they find a lot of their own value within like Instagram, or like awards and scholarships, or like promotions if you're in a job, whether or not you're in a relationship or you have friends, or like how many friends you have.
Yeah.
And so then their obstacle is them finally realizing that that's not what gives them happiness in life, and them trying to learn how to like find identity within themselves and not other things.
Right. Okay.
That's an idea.
That's not just an idea. That's like that's a great archetypal idea, and
awesome.
And it can sound like any archetypal idea. Like a lot of your things are going to sound like, oh, that's been done before. That's so trite, whatever. But we have to keep telling ourselves that story over and over again because we all go through that and we all like fall back into that over and over again. And great stories like remind us, how to get out of it, and what was that big insight I had when I was 17 when I stopped caring about that stuff, and then now I've forgotten it, that kind of thing. So, okay, do you guys want to run with that?
Yep. What if she is going to work one day and the opposite of her runs into her? She has a car wreck or something.
Yeah, interesting.
They have to get out,
car wreck is going to cost us some money. Production costs.
Starbucks and she goes around and
yeah.
coffee spills all over her.
Yeah.
And she finds out, she's like, this person is like the first trip ever to Starbucks. Her told her to actually go out and try it.
Mm-hmm.
So she came out from 20 miles away from the city.
Yeah.
To check out.
2 female leads, they help each other out.
She helps her with her.
One's materialistic and one isn't.
And then one helps
But
her.
one's cynical and doesn't care about anything. But
yeah.
The cynical one gets the reason, gets meaning from this person who makes meaning out of insignificant things.
Like Starbucks.
Okay, so I like it. Okay, so the cynical one, who's the cynical one? the superficial one?
No.
Okay.
The superficial one is like,
oh, just like up. Okay.
She's happy.
Okay.
For now.
Interesting.
Until everything that she's like built her validation on has been
Yeah.
Like she has a boyfriend and then he dumps her.
Yeah.
Or like she had a whole bunch of followers on Instagram and then it got like hacked or something.
Or it could like, you could also go like an opposite way with that. Like she learns, even though she still has it, how, because like I feel like a lot of stories, like something bad has to happen, but sometimes there are stories that happen where like everything's fine, but it's within themselves, like an internal issue. But then like she could still have the boyfriend. You could go either way with that though. Like they get dumped or they do get dumped. Or
All right. Okay, we're gonna have to do some serious story Sudoku with this. All right. Let's hang on to these elements for just a second. We've got two good characters now, and we actually have two storylines, which could be tricky, but possibly like really beneficial, right? Because they could help each other, right? Okay. So if you turn the page, there are these elements of hero stories. Joseph Campbell basically analyzed all hero stories throughout all cultures everywhere that were available to him in the late 30s and early 40s. And he came up with these 17 things that often happen in hero stories. And so these don't have to be present in our story. Not all of them have to be present, but each one is an interesting prompt, you know? Like, so we could just like ask ourselves, like step by step, and just ask ourselves, like, does this make sense to work into our story? And if not, we throw it out and we move on. All right, so 17 prompts. First one is the normal world and then an inciting incident. Let's just put those two together. And we've already, like we have something brewing here that I think is really good, right? We're kind of in this space right now. So we have one woman who everything's like apparently great. But she's like really invested in her online identity, and she's superficial, and maybe she's not actually like, she's not really truly joyful. Is there something?
Yeah.
Is that basically what's going on? Okay, and then we have another one who's in from the country, who's totally not on Instagram or anything.
Right.
Is she kind of like, and
She's more into like gardening.
yeah.
More wholesome kid.
Yeah. And do we need a reason for her to want to learn from this other person? So just jumping way ahead, like, is there a revelation here that you have in mind? Like, because you mentioned at the beginning, like, sort of a revelation. Like, so let's set that up. I can almost imagine, here's what I'm imagining, like what came to my mind is that in my own life, and this is, I think, a really good resource to tap into, is your own life and your own experience in this. And you have to like go really deep with this stuff sometimes. But so for me, like I've spent different eras of my life, I can actually see like these dips into struggling for fame and recognition and followers and counters and money, you know, like it's all tied together, right? And you get off the track when that happens, and then, you know, you kind of think about like what pulls you back. And so I have like a journal entry that I actually can think of right now, my own journal entry, and it has to do with like how I could never understand like why my wife loves me, and because like I thought it's easy to think that love has to be tied to like who you are and like popularity or looks or something, right? You must love me for a reason, right? Like you must love me because X, right? And I have this like journal entry where it says something, I can't remember exactly the line, but it would be worth pulling up the line to like massage for our project here. But the line is something like how, you know, 20 years later, it's like, it says something about like, you know, dishes get dirty and then done again, laundry gets dirty, then done again, cats die, we all cry. It's just this stuff of life, and then it just pauses and it says, love, like dancing and music, doesn't need to have a purpose or a reason. And like maybe there's something in that, right? Like that could be like we need like maybe some key line that we're working toward, right? Where this person is like struggling with like trying to fit in and trying to, not just trying to fit in, but trying to like dazzle people with their amazingness, right? And maybe there's some revelation that has to do with like self-love that transcends all of the need for the likes and that kind of stuff, right? But I think one thing that we stumbled onto here as a way of working is like really thinking deeply about our own journeys and then how that can translate into a story. And part of that, this then gets into like, how do you prepare for something like this? You know, I actually have a big race coming up about the same time. And how do you prepare for a race? Well, you run every day, right? You don't just like wait and then do it that day. So it wouldn't hurt to like think of a story every day. You have no idea what's going to be thrown at you on Thursday night. You know, they're going to throw wrinkles at you and you're going to have a certain framework. And so you may not, probably won't be able to use any of the ideas you come up with between now and then. But if you like practice, you know, telling stories and maybe even mining your own stories, turning your life, like different segments of your life into stories, like that can help you like understand who you are. It can also then prepare you for generating material in that 48 hours, you know. Well, the adventure can be into the unconscious or into chaos. And so sometimes you're thrown into the adventure against your will, right? And so for example, if we look at these three things, so you turn them into characters, which is a perfectly cool thing to do. But a lot of times these are actually like match the story circle so that, you know, you start off where, you know, life is good, you're full of life, you're everything's in order and you're in this conscious space. But when that self dies, like when the dancer in you died, now you're in the land of death and it's bad. And you have to probe your unconscious. Like there are things about you didn't know about yourself and you're learning about those things now because you're in chaos. Nothing makes sense to you anymore. Like your whole world was dancing. I'm going to be a dancer. Now you're thrown into chaos, probing your unconscious, and your old self has died. And we have to like bring it back. So that's kind of what's going on there. So maybe in the interest of time, we'll scoot past Campbell and go to Dan Harmon's super basic, he calls it super basic we're being filmed, but he calls it that. So, and it's just eight things. So it's a character's in his own zone of comfort. You're a dancer. Everything's great. But they want something. You want to be a better dancer. And you've lost all like thought that you can be a dancer. And so you enter an unfamiliar situation. You are not a good dancer. You're not good enough to be like a professional dancer. And you so adapt to it. Then you get what you want, but you pay a heavy price for it. Return to the familiar situation, having changed. And those are like the basic 8 elements. So what would it be if we just like had those 8 elements in this story? And it doesn't have to be just based on the real story. We can actually do other things here. So we have a dancer. Can you imagine like a scene? Like what is the scene of being thrown into an unfamiliar situation? The unfamiliar situation being essentially a failure. Is that okay? And should we step away from it's not about you anymore?
It's about her.
Okay. Let's now go to like the long version of story Sudoku just to see what we get out of that. So once upon a time there was this dancer who was blank, blank, and blank.
Young,
energetic, and passionate. Let's give her a weakness. Naive. What else?
Yeah, she was really
Let's give her some weaknesses. It's actually probably better to start the story with like, certainly young, yes, all those things, right? But let's think of like let's think of 3 weaknesses. Let's put weaknesses in here. Because we want to set the stage for transformation.
Okay.
Maybe like prideful.
I like these, yeah. Jealous, prideful. Those are going to be easy to play off of, right? Because this person maybe can actually like watch. Potentially we could have this person watching with joy other people dancing. And that's part of like the resolution, right? So sort of self-absorbed, jealous, prideful. Those are all good. Okay. And she had a problem. She failed at a recital. And this is a big deal because
made her realize that she's not.
her identity was stolen. I mean, it's a big deal to all of us because no, but like, how do we feel? I mean, we all go through this, right? Like, it's a big deal to all of us because we can relate to like what it feels like to lose your dreams, right?
Or it's when you become self-aware, like you realize that you're not the only person in the world.
Yeah.
Like, you're not the main story in the earth.
Yeah.
Whatever.
We're not to that revelation yet,
Oh,
but that's, but right now, like we know what it's like to be self-absorbed and think we're on one track and then suddenly realize like we're not on that track.
Feel free to chime in.
He's gonna like come in with like the wrap it all up, like big thing.
I just gotta think about stuff.
Yeah, he thinks like I do. He's gonna be fine. All right. So, and this was a really hard problem because
Wait, why is it a big deal though?
it's a big deal to all of us because we all go through like identity shifts and like have our plans derailed and stuff like that. And this is a really hard problem. So the hard problem is that she failed this thing. It's a really hard problem. So it's a hard problem because she doesn't know what to do next. Right? Her life's in shambles. But there were forces, people and forces not in her favor, like the lead dancer and the crowd, yeah. But she also had helpers and teachers like her mom. All right, and off we go. Okay, now she was hesitant to solve the problem because,
There was no way that she would be as good as the other ones.
but despite the odds, she set off on the adventure because.
She needed to feel something.
Now, is she going to keep trying to get better at this point, or is she like, is there, what's that? Yeah. So, all right. At this point, do you think she's setting off on the adventure to get better or to get at peace with not being good? I mean, this is kind of an interesting thing. We could actually run with like, everybody thinks like, she's just gonna, we can do a montage of her like just dancing and getting better and like it's 30 seconds of amazing, like just killing it, you know, just like, just dancing. I'm gonna get better. And like, you know, like that scene in Billy Elliot. You've seen Billy Elliot where he's trying to nail the twirl. He just can't get it. And then eventually he gets it and then he's like set free and he's like dancing everywhere. So, okay. So she faces many challenges like her, like she's not a good enough dancer.
It could be something like she had gotten injured
Yeah,
in the
that's what I was
past.
gonna say.
There you go.
And so maybe like the mom, this is 5 minutes, never mind. I'm just gonna hold back.
But okay, face many challenges like, like it's just hard to become a good dancer. An injury slows her down on the journey, and who knows? We'll leave it at that for now. We can come back. So then this happened, and they learned blank. Now, this is a time when you might go back to those opening three. She's jealous. She's self-absorbed. And what else? Is prideful too close to jealous? But let's just work on one of those. So let's work on the jealous one. And could something happen where she would learn, like having just a slight epiphany? She's not all the way there yet, but she has like a slight opening. Like maybe she sees like her villain, like her evil, what seems like the evil dancer, like helping somebody else out or something, right? Mm-hmm. And it's just like, you know, like, or maybe she gets helped by the so-called evil person, right? Like,
Yeah, because she's trying to work on something because of her injury.
Yeah.
And their girl helps her out, and then she actually kind of nails it.
yeah. Okay, and then something else happens, and what is the key thing here? Let's go back. Like we listed these three things, but we are setting this up for an epiphany, and the epiphany is that dancing isn't just about being the best. It's helping her like overcome her jealousy, and then we're trying to come up with like, I think there should be like some word for sort of needing to be the best and putting all your identity. Well, maybe it's identity. Maybe it's like just like putting all of the identity into being a dancer and being the best dancer and being a professional dancer. I wonder if like maybe there's something like where she sees a little girl dancing and it's just like amazing and it's beautiful, but then the little girl says something at the end that makes you realize like the little girl is already turning the corner from being like free-flowing, I love dancing, to I'm going to be the best at this. And she just immediately is like, oh, dang, like that's what happened to me. Like I used to just dance so freely and I just loved it. And then this little voice said, you got to be the best. And it became about being the best instead of about dancing. What's on the table is this idea that like there should be like something that we're building to, like so that everybody knows, the whole audience knows like there's a time crunch here and we're trying to get to this particular moment. She's training for X, Y, or Z, but she's learning lessons along the way. And maybe the whole goal is to like replace that dancer, right? It seems like that's the goal. But then this happened and this happened. This happened, the lead dancer shows compassion. It turns out the lead dancer like runs a school for girls, right? And then this happens. She goes to that school for girls and like is helping out and sees like these girls just dancing in flow. But then one of those girls like is going down this wrong path and she has like this revelation. And then the big event comes up. And maybe at that point, there's a couple different options that I could see. Like one option is that she remembers what it's like to just flow, and she just flows. And it's beautiful, and we see it, and we think, oh, she's surely going to get it. And then she doesn't have to get it, right? Like that's the whole point. It's like,
yeah, the story could end like, okay, she's doing her recital. The story could end before the
yeah,
wins.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. So this is a good chance to now think about like what ended up working for us. Like one was digging into our own stories and going deep on that. And then it seems like this worked really well, like this sort of like little longer version story Sudoku. I have a thing on the back here which is kind of good for planning. It's called a story circle. And this is like when you get to a stage where you realize like, okay, we're going to try to do this in a 5-minute film. And that's where you then like map out exactly like how long each scene should be. And this allows you to kind of put it in that circle, with the different quadrants labeled, and these little things can be like prompts. So typically what would happen is you can imagine like, some of the scenes, but there's a bunch of stuff missing. And by putting it on a circle, what's really cool about it is you can look over here and maybe you have a clear scene here, and you might want to like sort of foreshadow it and set it up exactly across the circle. That creates like some really neat symmetry, So story circles can be really good for kind of tweaking the story and filling in all the gaps and that kind of thing. So that's all I got.
Thank you.
Yeah. You guys did an awesome job with the story.
It's a lot harder than you think.
Yeah, but here we are an hour later and we actually have a good story,
That could
I wanna
seriously
read
turn
that
into
story.
like a good
You want to read my hero story?
It sounds